his show. It's mental health, not mental health,
Men's
it's Men's Health,
Health.
Month in June. And so today we're having three wise men to
Yeah.
join us in the studio. You're the third of our three wise men.
I've never
And
been
sorry
called
to
that
call you
before.
Michael, because it's Nigel, and welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks
So
for
Nigel,
joining us.
you work as a transformational coach and you're the owner of Growth Evolution. What we wanted to talk to you about today though was resilience, because you've had a very varied career, a long span in the military. You've gone through a lot of things, and it's that idea of how do you keep going, and we wanted to find out a bit about your background and what's been going on for you in your life.
Yeah, I spent 25 years in the Royal Air Force back in the UK as a paramedic, as a combat medic. And I think I went in to become a medic to help people. So it was always the other person that the resilience came from, if you know what I mean. I was always in support, always wishing to help, always wanting to serve. And when you serve amongst like-minded people that have the same background as you, the brotherhood or sisterhood, all together, you're not going for the political cause if you go overseas. It's about me doing my job as a medic to support the guys out on the front line doing their job as soldiers. And that's what you go for. The resilience is that team.
That connection, community.
Yeah, you know these guys all day, every day, because you serve with them. They may have different roles on a day-to-day basis than you, but when the team comes together, if I do my job as a medic and the soldier does his job and the helicopter pilot does his job, then ultimately the mission will always get done. The politics doesn't particularly matter. It's what we do to serve each other, which is the connection we have in life as well. We all have a purpose to serve each other, and it's to find out where you fit in that. And finding the family that you belong to that are going to serve you and encourage you and help you grow.
Yeah, so a life dedicated to helping people. So that was 25 years in the military as a medic. But there's some other career highlights that you've been involved in that are quite extraordinary.
Yeah, my wife and I went and did a bit of travelling to try and sort of demilitarise myself, shall we say.
You've done quite well.
We've done okay. And it was based around, just trying to take away the formal Nigel to find out the new Nigel when I left the service. So we went travelling around Thailand to find myself and a bit more spiritual, a bit more holistic, based on the medical stuff that I'd done, but also just finding other avenues to try and serve people.
What was one of the highlights of travelling Thailand?
I studied Thai medicine, to be honest. I studied Thai massage for a while. We had an international school up in Chiang Mai. So we got to connect to people. We got people all over the world, all offering, again, different tips and tricks and techniques that they use around. But we got to meet the Thai people. We had loads of friends within the school that are our mentors and our teachers. So we got the Thai culture. We go around their houses. So we become immersed in their community, which I think was what we went traveling for. And we've created long life friendships from that. We still speak to some of the Thai people, and even the landlady who we stayed with in Thailand in Chiang Mai has come in London and stayed with me.
Oh, wonderful! And then what was the next chapter?
Well, the next chapter, there was a little show, it was not very well known, called the London Olympics.
Sorry. Oh my gosh, to have been there, that would have been magic.
I fell into it, I feel, but obviously that the universe had put me in that path, and I went along to be a medical manager of one of the venues on the main site at Stratford. So I would have run the Olympic Stadium itself, or the swimming pool, or the velodrome.
Give us an idea of the size of the London Olympics.
How many people went through the gates every day?
There was something like 250,000 a day.
Wow.
So that's how many clinically we were responsible for.
Yeah.
So we had 10 venues. We looked after the athletes themselves whilst they were in the stadium. We looked after the emergency on-field stuff, so not the going on with the wet sponge from the football. But then it was based around if there was any emergencies or trauma or whatever. We had orthopedic surgeons sat on the side of were volunteering to work with us. And we would be in charge of that, as well as stadium first aid for all the audience, as well as the park first aid and trauma for the whole village, really.
Wow, incredible time. And that sense of community, again, you're not just talking about people locally, but that was an international community. That was incredible. I wanted to know what might be some of the most memorable things for you about working at the London Olympics.
Was the people. You know, even though I became, instead of actually just doing a venue, I ended up running the whole main park. I was the medical manager in charge of the whole thing at the end.
Yeah.
So I had all 10 venues and whatever under mine. And the Olympic opening ceremony as well,
Oh,
I was privy to that. But even certain elements of that I didn't know until on the day. So I was very lucky at one point on one of the rehearsals, we had to work out where we would place our emergency personnel for the ceremony when they were doing a rehearsal, that myself and the chief medical officer, happened to be the Queen's physician, were sitting in the royal box with an empty stadium whilst they were performing, not for us, they were practicing, but for us to see what the scale of it all was.
Fabulous. And so Nigel, what was the catalyst for deciding to come and settle in beautiful Perth?
I actually grew up here, funny enough. My
Did you?
parents were originally 10 pound Poms.
Yeah.
So I came here when I was a year old until I was sort of 9. So I lived in Belmont and played soccer down there and went to Kewdale Primary. And then once I went back home and I did my secondary school in Harwich in Essex, which is a small sort of port town, it was just not big enough for me. Hence joining the military to expand myself and travel and challenge myself. Then it wasn't until really the end of my career and the Olympics, and really my wife and I were like, well, what's the next challenge? And if we were going to come to Australia, which both of us wanted to do, it was going to be to come back to Perth. I was coming home.
yeah. So you've travelled to a lot of different countries in your military career,
Yes.
and can you tell us a little bit about some of the places and things that you did? Did you get trained in did you have to go in through helicopters and things?
Yeah, well, helicopters were my speciality.
Oh,
So I was a specialist aeromedical evacuation medic. So I would be the medic on the back of the helicopters, going out to the front line to pick up the troops that were injured, transporting them around inside operational areas. So from when I was in Afghan, from Bastion up to Kandahar, depending on the clinical need of the casualty, but also we were responsible for bringing them all the way home back to the UK for their onward care.
And then when you came to Australia, you went back to healthcare again?
Yeah, well, I struggled really to find out where I fitted in Australia when I first came, and I did a couple of products for WAFA, and set up a comprehensive primary care product for them, but then really didn't know where I fitted in. And I think throughout my career, when I had mentored so many people and looked after people, but it was always based on Nigel. You know, what was Nigel's idea? Daddy Nigel, Uncle Nigel, he'll know the answers. But when I got the opportunity to study life coaching, which I've done, and NLP and hypnosis and everything else from a mindset perspective, it became less of me and more of a strategic way of working with people to get the best out of them. And everybody knows what they ultimately need to do for themselves, but sometimes they just need that bit of a push, the change in mindset, the accountability of working with a coach, all those sorts of things that when they work with family or friends and take advice, they've always got an invested interest.
or an excuse.
Or an
Yeah.
excuse.
Yeah.
So Nigel, what would you say would be your biggest challenge, both professionally and personally to date?
Personally, I am a cancer survivor. I had testicular cancer back in 2013, just after the Olympics. And again, you know, I'd have been an exceptionally fit, almost professional sportsman, running around all my life, and had challenges. And you know, I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, Falklands, Bosnia, you name it, I've served everywhere. But that was one that, you know, I had no option but to stop and deal with. I was just trying to get fit again, and noticed that something was wrong. And
What did you notice? Like, what are the sort of warning signs? I'm sure it's different for everyone.
well, for me, I was literally trying to get back into another fitness regime, and you know, I just left the Air Force and just come out of the Olympics and was quite tired after the exhaustion of that, and I was just trying to get back into myself, and I just noticed that I wasn't moving well. You know, one testicle was slightly bigger than the other, and it's the same with everything of everybody's body, whether it be a breast or arms, legs,
Asymmetrical,
different
normal,
feet,
yeah.
you know. So that had always been there, but all of a sudden it became prominent.
Okay, so there was
and
a change.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
change that I noticed, and my wife being a sonographer, was very much like, let's get this checked out.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of men, you don't really want to go to the doctors and drop your trousers, but
Yeah.
but ultimately, you know, I knew something was not quite right.
I'm
and
glad you went.
yeah, it was the best decision.
And testicular cancer is more of a younger man's
Well,
illness. What's
there's
the sort
two elements.
Yeah.
There's a seminoma, which is for a young person, so that from anyone from 18 to 25,
Yeah.
it's more prominent. I think it's called tetranoma, which is the one which is slightly older men.
Okay,
And obviously
yeah.
I was about 46, I think, at the time.
Right, yeah.
So it got quite scary. But actually I was very lucky it was a seminoma.
Yeah,
So I'm a young man at heart.
yeah.
And that could be dealt with, but it had gone to stage 2 and was actually within my lymph nodes in my groins. So I had to go through the whole surgery to have a orchidectomy, so one removed. But also I had the 4 to 5 levels of chemotherapy post.
Wow.
So with that, with many types of cancer, early detection and treatment is key to the success.
Definitely.
So it's one of those checks that, just like women, we have to check our breasts. The same with, well, men should check their breasts as well, but
Yes.
checking the testicles. So what advice would you say to men that are listening about doing that regular
And their
check?
partners. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you only get one chance, you know, and if there is something slightly wrong, for a 5-second examination or an ultrasound scan, which is what my wife does as well, by
Yeah.
the way, to know and get early treatment. I'd gone to stage 2, which was treatable. You know, they took out the lymph nodes within the groin as well as the testicle. So that gave me a clearance, but obviously because I'd gone to stage 2, I then had to go through the chemotherapy. But also, if I'd have gone to stage 3 or 4, then there is no way back. So that early detection and going in and saying, like, hands up,
Yeah.
I think something's slightly wrong, can you just check me out for 2 minutes? It could be a no, it's fine, but you can get answers that you can't replicate if you wait and wait and wait. It gets too far down the line, and
Yeah. And we know that men are not very good at going to the doctors for the preventative stuff and
no,
for
they're
the
not.
general health checkups. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the health system hasn't adapted to be more male friendly. In some areas there's sort of pit stops and things like that, but typically you've got to be proactive and go. And for a lot of men, you know, they're busy and it might feel a bit awkward, but it's so important, isn't it?
Oh, it's beyond important. It's your life at the end of the day. If I'd have waited 6 months more and saying, oh, it's just an infection, it's a swollen testicle, I'll
It'll
get
go
over
away.
it, it'll go away.
Yeah.
If I had waited 6 months down the line, it could have been a stage 3 and that could have been my life.
Yeah. And I'm looking at you now, you're a picture of fitness and health. You've got a thick head of hair and you're moving on to transform other people's lives.
Yeah, it's what I've done in a way. Like I said, clinically I've been helping people all of my life, and then, but when the further you go up the ranks of the military, you become their mentor, like I discussed earlier. So now, actually having all the tools and tips and study that I've done over the years, based on my experiences of my life and trauma that I've been through, trauma I've seen, life hurdles that you've gone through, a marriage breakup that was awful, the separation from kids, all of those tools and tips and tricks you can use to the betterment of others. And that allows them to take some advice and experiences of what you've gone through, as well as the tools for them to gain some level of learning themselves.
Yeah, nobody's going to trust a coach who hasn't been through things.
It's been incredible chatting with you this morning, Nigel. We're almost out of time. Thank you so much for coming along and sharing your story so candidly, and for the work that you do. Keep on sharing that message, particularly for Men's Health Month. And we've got a track to lead us into the break. We're going to hear from George Michael. First of all, tell us where people can find out more about you.
Okay, my business is called Growth Evolution Coaching.
Yeah.
So it's growthevolution.com.au or nigel@growthevolution.com.au. Yeah, drop me a line. Let's have a coffee and a conversation, because you just never know where that leads.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Nigel Ty, for being a guest. You're listening to 89.7 FM. Lisa Malou here in good company. George Michael, that we'll be right back after the short break.